with Dr. Leyland. Step into the future, the world is waiting now. Dreams are in the making, we'll show you how. From the books to the screen, from the stage to the stars. Level up your game, let's raise the bar. Innovation, inspiration, it's in our DNA. Breaking through the limits, we're paving the way. Level up, reach the sky, take the lead, don't be shy. Your story's worth it, your light will shine. At Level Up Academy, it's your time. Oh, it's your time. At Level Up Academy, we rise and climb. Empowered in your passion, your voice will be heard. Building a legacy with every word. From podcasts to pages, from business to art. Level Up's the place where it all can start. With heart and with vision, we're chasing every goal. Together we'll ignite the fire in your soul. Level up, reach the sky, take the lead, don't be shy. Your story's worth it, your light will shine. At Level Up Academy, it's your time. Oh, it's your time. At Level Up Academy, we rise and climb. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh, we're trailblazing, breaking through the mold. Dreams are alive, let your story unfold. With courage and pride, we'll take the fight. At Level Up, we own the night. Level up, reach the sky, take the lead, don't be shy. Your story's worth it, your light will shine. At Level Up Academy, it's your time. Oh, it's your time. At Level Up Academy, we rise and climb. So let's level up and never look back. On the road to greatness, we're on the right track. Together we'll soar, together we'll thrive. At Level Up Academy, we're alive.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you guys are doing fantastic this morning. And it is Thursday, right? It is amazing day. And I just want you guys to know that this amazing human being is my guest today. Ceiling to floor growing legacy leaders. There's leaders and then there's leaders, right? So there's going to be a difference in the way people look at leadership. I'm actually very interested to hear Charles on the culture side of leadership from an American perspective versus Asian perspective. There are actually differences. And I wanted to talk about the nuances, but also the similarities, right? Because people are people. And we'll see what Charles has to offer to us today. But before I introduce him, let me go ahead and always, right? Always here. Hello. I am your host, Dr. Leland. Welcome to Level Up Academy. And I want to make sure that you guys know that we are committed to our community and we always provide.
Tia here, founder and executive director of Confronting Domestic Violence. Confronting Domestic Violence is actually founded from my personal experience of surviving a double attempted homicide. I was 8 months pregnant, over 1,000 miles away from home, and had an 8-year-old daughter present at the time. What we do is we have a program that is 2 parts, and it's very well stated in our mission statement. We provide real-time resources to real-time victims, and we offer relocation services when a family has a safe place to go and not the means to get there. All too often, fear and finances are the reason victims stay in their abusive situation. About 20 years later, after surviving that double attempted homicide, I was in ICU. I was in a very bad car accident with a 1% chance of making it. And from there, after petitioning my creator why my life was being spared, is where Confronting Domestic Violence was born. I realized that I had endured and navigated through so many uncharted waters, not knowing where to find resources or where to find help or where to find what I needed at the time that it was needed. As circumstances change, so do needs. So from ICU, Confronting Domestic Violence was born. I decided to talk about post-traumatic growth, what that is, what the journey is to get there, and now to provide these resources to fill the gaps through, I don't know what else to say. That's where we're ending.
Of course, I muted myself, and Susanna's calling me. So if you guys are ever in San Diego, make sure that you guys come in and enjoy the people here with Confronting Domestic Violence, because we are here to provide help not only for the people who are experiencing hardship in domestic violence, but also the people who are volunteering, right? So we all have common goal, which is to help others and our community. Now, speaking of community, I also want to bring up my sister Danielle's daughter, Elise. She still has Kawasaki disease, obviously, and she's still recovering from her hospitalization. But most importantly, she needed to actually find a heart doctor, and they're going to Stanford. But unfortunately, her insurance got denied. Her insurance denied her ability to seek help where it's needed. So right now, we are asking and pleading for your kindness and generosity, whether it's financial, prayers, or also sharing her story. So we appreciate you. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to scan that QR code, and hopefully you're able to help. All right. And of course, my 50 inspirational connections, this is its third year, third reiteration. It's actually free amplification for people, business owners who are there but wanting to amplify their messages out there. And it's really hard to amplify when there's too many noises. There's too many podcasters, there's too many things going on, right? And I use my platform of almost 200,000 followers to really elevate business owners who are inspirational in their community, and literally giving them a boost up so that their messages can be heard all over the world. I do have, my podcast is in 6 continents and also 155 countries and nations. So I would love to use that and help others. And this is all free for anyone who has inspirational stories to share. So scan that QR code and we will see you soon. All right. And also, I know I have a lot going on, right? So this one is our new anthology coming up. It will end. The opportunity will end by August. So if you ever wanting to write a book, or maybe you already have a couple books, but you've never collaborated with Level Up, I would love for you to collaborate with us. Now, let me tell you a little bit of what it's all about. The book is called In the Space Between, the Stories We Don't Say Out Loud, because when you ask people, how did you get here today? They tell you their beginning, and then they'll tell you the current situation in their life. But no one talks about the hardship. No one talks about the ugly side of humanity and how you got to where your accolades are. No one ever talks about that. And I really want to just encapsulate portions of it, obviously, and some of it that inspires others through the world. My goal really is to inspire people for themselves. I want them to be inspired by their own stories. I want them to be inspired that they are enough. They are great already, and they just need to level up their skills, whether it's soft skills or hard skills. And it's really important to look within rather than external. However, we do need coaches in our lives. Okay, believe it or not, we do. And people says, "Oh, I don't need it, and I'm already got enough." You might want to rethink that. Even I need coaches. Okay. So that is for sure. Thank you guys so much for looking out for me. You're like, CJ, we can't hear you. I appreciate you guys so much. Okay. So before I bring in Charles, I want to literally tell you about him, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. Today, he isn't just a coach, guys. He's a catalyst of transformation. Remember, I talked to you about Level Up Academy. We're all about transforming lives. Now, for over 35 years of experience, and Charles is 21. Let's just put that there, okay? But his experience is 35 years, okay? Shaping leaders across the globe. He is actually in Hong Kong right now. And I thought he was only there temporarily. Honestly, I don't know why I thought about that. But Charles Caldwell is the executive whisperer behind some of the most powerful leadership breakthroughs in business today. From launching his first company, get this, at age 16, gracing the cover of the Canadian Business by age 24, okay, Charles has lived every stage of leadership, entrepreneurship, corporate HR. He's a powerhouse. He's also a 2 times TEDx speaker and now a top rated global coach. He has advised Fortune 500 giants like Oracle or AT&T. I know you guys know who they are. Mentored startup founders like myself and really big people out there, and helped leaders navigate both boardrooms and breakdowns with equal mastery. Now, Charles, I believe, fuses cutting edge, maybe even AI and time tested human wisdom to supercharge your personal and professional growth. Think like Harvard meets Jedi Master, right? He's known for helping people get promoted, unlock clarity, and lead with compassion. And that's big for me. And with conviction. And he holds an executive MBA, a certificate in neuro leadership, and is actually currently pursuing his doctorate in effectiveness of virtual versus in-person coaching. And I want to talk to him about that as well. And I love that he has authored international bestsellers Speechless and Rattled Awake as well. All right, so let's welcome the man who's turning leadership ceilings into launch pads for the next generation. Now, I remember our conversation today is about leadership, ceiling to floor, growing legacy leaders. That means if you're a leader out there and you want to level up your leadership skills, this is the podcast for you. Charles, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much, CJ. It's great to be here. Really, what an inspiring start. I love the musical intro at the start. It's I was ready to get up and start dancing at my desk here.
I'm glad that you wanted to like groove at midnight, right? That is so crazy.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so most of my people that come here that I actually interview, I always have usually like the first question, right? Think about here's the question. Think about 20 years ago and find within your timeline some of the significant changes in your life that got you here where you are today, and kind of mention like, how did you even decide I'm going to live in Hong Kong?
Yeah, well, actually, I can tell you there were two defining moments, and it's really interesting to reflect back on those. So when I was running my company, I got to a point where I had about 14 employees, and I don't know exactly what happened, but I had this kind of really powerful insight that I was being too much of a top-down leader. And basically, my business was a marine company. We cleaned, renovated, repaired boats. We had scuba diving services, so we would do underwater salvage and things like that. And we had very little overhead, so we could undercut the competition. And we're going all over the Great Lakes and Canada and some parts of the United States sometimes. And so I had about 14 employees. We used to do some pretty high-tech stuff. So we used to spray paint this really high-tech paint onto the bottom of racing boats, like racing yachts. And I was always the one that did the spray painting. And one day I just had this epiphany. Why am I doing the spray painting? And I actually, my team and I went over to the boat. We get everything all set up, and then I say to one of my top guys, I say, "Okay, suit yourself up." And he says, "Why should I suit up? You're the one doing the spray painting." I said, "No. Today you're going to do the spray painting." And there was just like this real transformational moment in my leadership journey where I recognized, I just saw this transition take place from me doing the work and kind of being the hero to my employees doing the work and them being the heroes. And on that same day, right after he had just started spray painting the boat, we got the whole boat wrapped up in a tent and stuff like that. And the boat's like 50 feet long. It's a 2-tonner racing yacht. This other guy from my team comes over to me. He says, "We got this problem on the boat. I think you better come check it out." And I said, "Well, describe the problem to me." He told me the problem. I said, "What's the solution?" He told me the solution. I said, "Yeah, go do that." He says, "Well, don't you want to look it out?" And I said, "No, I trust you. You just go do it. If you have a problem, come back and let me know, but I trust you." So that was really where I'm like 19 years old at this point, right? And that was when I really understood the power of empathetic, empowering leadership, of really, getting to know your people and really encouraging them to be the heroes in your business and being the heroes in your leadership journey. Now, around about that same time, I had a vision to work overseas. And very early in my career, I actually had an opportunity to come to Asia with an organization called Rotary. You might be familiar with them. They had a group study exchange. So I came over to Asia for 6 weeks. I was in Malaysia, I was in Singapore, I was in Thailand. I was studying all these companies, and it was in the really early growth years in Asia. And I really saw a vision for my career in the future and for the region. And I literally, CJ, came up with an affirmation called Go Global. And then I changed that affirmation to Gone Global, like past tense, as if it had already happened. And lo and behold, a couple of years later, I had an opportunity to go back to school. I did an Asian management program in Vancouver, and from there was recruited to work in Hong Kong. And I totally forgot about that affirmation until I was going through some boxes here in Hong Kong. I was moving flats or moving apartments, and I found this card that I made, Gone Global, and I just looked at it and I thought, oh my gosh, I went global. I'm here in Hong Kong. I've had regional roles and global roles out of Hong Kong. So that was, I think that's an answer to your question. That was definitely a defining moment for me, a real shift in my leadership journey.
Wow, I love that you started with affirmations, and it's really powerful. I think what people realize, and what I realized, the people who actually believed in their affirmations, it's one thing to write them down. It's another to actually etch it in your subconscious, right? Because we're walking around with 95% of our subconscious rather than conscious mind. So if you believe in your affirmation, it will definitely happen. That's why I said be careful what you ask for. And it's so funny because this happens to me all the time, like 99.9%. I'd be driving around and it's so busy in the mall. I'm like, I'm gonna, and my husband's like, why are you going in the front? Like, you're never gonna find parking space. And I was like, no, I'm gonna find parking space. Lo and behold, every single time I always find parking space. And you don't really think about those little things that happens in your life. And that's so powerful that you actually said, okay, I'm gonna go global. And then since then, you haven't left Hong Kong. What's the attraction on staying there?
Well, Hong Kong has been really good to me. I've had just progressive career opportunities with increasing responsibilities. My wife and I have 4 kids, including triplets. So I'm in HR. I have headcount issues everywhere. We have access to outstanding education institutions in Hong Kong, and we just decided to stay. And the opportunity was too great not to stay and see all the amazing things that were going on. But the one thing I want to add about affirmations is that neuroscience would validate affirmations because when you actually have affirmations, two things are happening. One of them is you're rewiring the brain through rewiring neuroplasticity towards that affirmation. But you're also activating parts of the brain. It's called the RAS. You're activating certain regions of the brain which start to hunt for that, for the reality of that affirmation. It's a little bit like thinking about buying a red car, and then the next thing you see all over the place is you see that red car on the streets. It's the same phenomenon, but you could just apply it to affirmations. But yeah, Hong Kong's been great to us. We've loved staying here, and it's been an amazing opportunity.
I love it. Now, you often say, actually, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, right, about my ceiling is the next generation's floor. How does that belief show up in your coaching practices today? What does that mean to people? Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so it shows up in two ways. One of them is I have a real bias for people's potential. Even when people can be in the darkest places, I will be able to see the potential in them, regardless of what age that they are. And so that's one really obvious way that it'll show up. Now, I do coach senior executives and have coached some amazingly powerful people, some of which I can't name out of respect for their privacy, but it's been quite phenomenal. But I also do a lot of mentoring here in Hong Kong. I'm involved in 3 mentoring programs, one through Hong Kong University, one through my church, and then another one through a startup organization that nurtures young entrepreneurs like myself years ago who have a startup, a great idea that they want to bring to success. And when I was younger, going through those years when I was redefining my leadership, I had mentors of various types. And I didn't really realize it at the time that they were mentors, because back then you didn't really talk a lot about mentorship. But when I reflect back on my life, I can see that they made a really big difference in helping me grow and develop as a leader and as an entrepreneur and as a business person. And I want to give back to the community. And I really, really believe in the power of that. And that's why I have this mantra, my ceiling is the next generation's floor. I've been in, also with 4 kids, I was involved in youth groups and all sorts of things happening at school, but a lot really involved in youth groups in my church. And that's when I came up with that idea, my ceiling is the next generation's floor, to give back to people.
I love that. I think most leaders today, one form or another, wants to give back to their community. I've also read there was an article, I think, written from Harvard Business Review about how, because of interconnectivity that we have in this world, right? I mean, it's so amazing that I can interview you in Hong Kong at midnight, and here it's only 9 a.m. in California. And
Amazing.
really think about like how interconnectivity helps but also hinders at the same time, right? It really depends on what you're trying to do, and you're giving back to the community. So Harvard Business Review was saying that most people nowadays, or actually businesses and corporate, don't get engagement from customers anymore. But the people who work for their organizations get engagement at that level because they crave humanity as we go and move into this revolution of that, right? So this is my next question to you. You're known for blending AI with human wisdom. How are you using AI in coaching without losing the soul of the process?
Great question. I love that question. And I love the fact that you've used soul, because I think that spirituality is an important part, and well-being is an important part of coaching, making sure that people are well. When we're talking about AI in coaching, I want to just clarify for people that are listening that I'm talking about using AI as a supplement for human-to-human coaching. There's a lot of innovation and a lot of experimentation currently taking place with human to AI coaching. There, with various levels of success. I have seen some amazing success. Neuro Leadership Institute is developing a tool that they've not yet fully commercialized, but it is so real that when David Rock demoed it to a bunch of senior HR executives, we thought that there was actually a human behind the curtain, because it was just so realistic. It was unbelievable. But I've also seen a lot of attempts at AI to human coaching that have been unsuccessful, and just they lose that soul that you're talking about. So one of the things that I'm doing is I use a variety of different AI tools to keep track of the coaching progress that I make with my clients over time. And what the AI is able to do is capture the ideas and capture the thoughts and the conversations that we're having. And what is remarkable is how much as humans we actually forget that we talk about. Even the best note takers in the world who are taking notes. Typically when people are taking notes, they're getting distracted, and you have to stop talking while they're taking notes during coaching. But the AI is actually able to take notes on our behalf. The power of the AI is that we're actually able to go back and answer and ask the AI questions about our conversations. So, for example, I have one client who's gets easily distracted, and over the series of, he's quite a competent individual, high-powered senior executive, huge potential for the future. Even without my bias, he has huge potential for the future, but he gets easily distracted. And I kept having to ask him questions such as, what should we focus on? And eventually I asked the AI, what should this individual focus on? And the AI looked over 5 sessions. What is the most important person? Because you always ask questions like, what's the 80-20 rule? What's the 20% that creates 80% of the results? What are your priorities? What's most important for you this coming week or this coming month? What's your goal? That sort of thing. And the AI just looked across all those conversations and distilled it down into the top 1, 2, 3 things that this individual should focus on. And so I basically said to him, this is what the AI is saying, that your priorities are the following. And when he stopped and really let that sink in, he realized, you're right, those are my priorities, but it was just too easy for him to get distracted and forget about stuff like that. So it's a very simple example, but we're able to look at life purpose, we're able to look at business strategy, all sorts of questions like that we can ask the AI. There's no limit to what we can ask the AI. And I just want to also add in here that the AI that I use is ring fenced. So it's in a sandbox, which is AI speak for, it's within a data privacy domain, so that I'm the only one that has access to it. And I let my clients have access to the conversations that we have. So it's data protected, which is a big worry for people.
Yeah, privacy and security.
Exactly.
Yes, and thank you for sharing that. And a lot of people, I think it's so funny because everyone, I don't know where to even take that. Like, people always think AI is ChatGPT. It's not. It's more than that. Like, it's so many things to use. It's like saying the internet is just the internet. No, it's actually more than that, right? And I love that you're saying that. So for me, I actually use what I call Claude AI. It's actually attached to ChatGPT. And what it does is that it even does mind map on the conversations. But I do tell my clients, and it's like, hey, I'm gonna send you guys the I've been using this for over a year, and I put it on the website. But I actually use that because what happens is when you record it, like you said, it's a note taker. That's what it is. It's just a note taker, but it actually decides and decipher the to-do list that you need to do after the conversation. It also mind maps of all the thoughts and conversations that you need. And then it eventually will, like, you can see the pattern of what you want. And what I love about it is that you can pick and choose what kind of conversations and notes that you want to do. So AI is more than that. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Now, my next question for you is, what do you believe separates transformational leadership from transactional leadership in today's fast changing world? Now, let me give you a caveat. Most people will say, okay, transformational is thinking about really transforming the leader, and transactional is more like, give me your money. I want to go dig deeper than just that basic definition based on your experiences, doing global leader coaching.
Yeah, well, I think the transactional leadership focuses on the exchanges and the rewards and the motivation factors, whereas transformational leadership really focuses on paradigm shifts. And I mean, that's kind of it, paradigm shifts. And I specifically say paradigm shifts because I think when people think of transformational leadership, they're thinking of paradigm shifts within people, but there's also paradigm shifts within companies. So, for example, are we in the right market? Netflix versus Blockbuster. Blockbuster was focusing on videotapes, and Netflix said, are videotapes even relevant in the future? When Apple came along, companies were worried about making better phones, and Apple asked the question, what if phones are more than phones and there's something else altogether? So I think that is really important. Transactional is more about motivating individuals, getting them to be better, incrementally better. maybe more than incrementally better. They could have a breakthrough where they're more than incrementally better. But transformational, real, true transformational breakthroughs and transformational leadership is when transformation's happening every single time. So breakthroughs are happening with people every single time. And that is what's needed in this fast changing, highly disruptive world.
That is something that because when I teach leadership courses, and I'm always curious on people who've coached global leaders. And when I did Nestle, this was, oof, my kids were probably like 17 years ago. When you're coaching, cultural differences kicks in. When you're coaching a different organization, we're talking Filipinos versus Swedes, right? And it's different than American as well. So trying to find how they're going to collaborate and work in this business deal that they're trying to do sometimes could be difficult because of cultural differences, right? As someone who's coached inside global giants like Oracle and the likes, what common leadership blind spots do you see, even at the top?
Yeah, well, right now, I think one of the problems the planet has is that the global model for leadership, the role model for leadership is not great. And that's a huge problem. And I'm not just talking about, what we're seeing happening in the United States, where we're seeing a high degree of polarization and people with their heels dug in and casting very strong views about leadership. I'm not talking about that, although that is an example. It's happening all over the world in all places. And one of the worries that I had, one of the trends we've seen in the last several years is that the younger generation believes much more in empathetic leadership and authentic leadership and collaborative leadership, to a point where I really had faith in the younger generation that they were going to, as more and more of them graduate out of university, as more and more of them enter their early careers, that they're just not going to stand for the more dictatorial, top-down type of leadership that we're seeing role modeled around the world, which has had a resurgence in the last several years, because there was a move towards a more authentic leadership, a more servant leadership philosophy, which one of the ways the theory would talk about it is called post-heroic leadership. So there was a shift from heroic to post-heroic leadership. We're now seeing that shift back to the more top-down type of leadership. And I'm seeing this in the mentoring programs. I just finished a couple of years with some mentoring groups here in Hong Kong. And I can see how when they look out into the world and they see the resurgence of the role model leadership models that are being role modeled out, that they're not really wonderful and they're more top down, that they're starting to get a little bit jaded, which worries me a little bit. We don't want them to get jaded. We want them to stay empowered. We want them to stay empathetic. So this is this whole concept of role modeling leadership is really, really, really critical, because coming out of all the disruption that we've had in the last 4 or 5 years, the pandemic being the biggest one, but then we also have the Ukraine war, we have what's happening in the Middle East, we have what's happening in Sudan, we have, all over the world there's conflict. Even in between Cambodia and Thailand in the last 2 weeks, we've had conflict spark up in an exchange of military action between the two countries. But this is creates a lot of stress for people. And the only way managers and leaders can respond to that is through empathetic leadership. Any other way of responding to that, other than empathetic leadership, is going to demoralize and disenfranchise the people that are in the workforce, regardless of the generations that they're in, but especially going to disenfranchise the younger generation, and discourage the younger generation. So it's really critical that people learn how to practice empathetic leadership. And from a cross-cultural perspective, the one thing I want to say is that in my 29 years in Hong Kong, I have seen, to use your term, I have seen the leadership in Asia level up. I used to use a term that, I still use the term called the global workforce, which means that the people in Shanghai, the people in Beijing, the people in Bangalore, the people in the Middle East, there that are working in the Philippines or working in BPOs and multinational companies, they understand the basic concepts of the global workforce. They understand how multinationals work, whether that's an Asian multinational or an American multinational or a European multinational. They understand how these organizations work. They understand how they're driven. There are always going to be differences. You're always going to find some companies are more hierarchical and some of them are more fluid, a little more egalitarian, such as American companies. But they basically understand the global workforce. Now, you didn't see this in leadership 29 years ago. And also, leaders tended to be new leaders 29 years ago. They didn't have a lot of downturn experience. And yet now they've lived through the Asian currency crisis. They lived through the GFC. They've lived through the pandemic. They've seen ups and downs. And now we're actually seeing leaders with a lot of good business experience in Asia, which means that the transfer of expatriates, the fluidity of foreigners moving about through Europe, Eastern Europe, through Asia, through Africa has changed dramatically in the last 29 years because the Asian leaders have, to use your term, leveled up. So cross-cultural is important, and cross-cultural training, if you do it, is very, very effective. But meanwhile, you do have this group of individuals that understand more about the global workforce than they would have 29, 30 years ago. That was a very long answer, and I'm sorry about that.
No worries. I know I was like looking all weird because I think we just had an earthquake of 4.5. I saw my house
Oh
shaking.
my
I'm like, what
gosh.
is happening? Yeah, we're good.
I
We're
thought your
okay.
internet was just glitching.
Yeah, we had an earthquake. That is so weird.
Are you
I was like,
safe?
yeah, it's fine. Oh my gosh, that is so funny, but not funny. No, the Asian crisis, like when we talked about 30-year from 95 to like 2025, right? We talked about,
Mhm.
I mean, you talked about that, but there's a lot of key issues. What I really love is that when China entered WTO in 2001, as the world's factory, they lift millions out of poverty and they created so many homes and blah blah blah. But then we had a global financial crisis in 2008, right? So they literally had a stimulus of like almost 600 billion to stabilize their growth and market, and then they crashed in 2015. So you see all of these leadership come in and out of poverty and then going in, and now it's like really booming as well. I wanted to see that when you coach executives, right? Most people will want to go up. They want to get promoted. But there's always that conflict. And I know that Asian conflict is so different because it's all about saving face for us. Like, we're not very confrontational. We can be, but our first inkling is to not be confrontational. But we also want to navigate the conflict. And some are overly dramatic and sensitive, and some are actually based on family. Like you can't really say anything if someone is promoted, especially if they're the daughter or the cousin of the owner, right? In some organizations. So we're talking about conflict here. And this is something that I wanted to ask, and I'm curious. You've helped people get promoted, navigate conflicts, and plan life exits because sometimes you got to exit your own corporate world. What's one coaching story that still gives you like goosebumps? And then we're going to transition to where you're at today.
A coaching story that gives me goosebumps. Well, there's two that comes to mind. There was one individual that was coaching here in Asia. They first contacted me because they were concerned that they were actually the victim of harassment, and they were trying to get an independent HR professional view on how to navigate that situation, and were they actually a victim of harassment. And it was a pretty gray zone, and I think the individual would probably agree with me if they were listening, that, which I doubt they are, but they might be, is they probably would agree that they were more likely a victim of bad management and bad leadership, and which was not great. And so the coaching was how to navigate that and how to influence, because this person was in a place of influence, and it was about how they could influence the organization through their own influence to try to stand for the right kind of leadership and what the company claimed its values were, because some of these leaders were not operating consistent with its values. But what happened next was this company went through a restructuring, and this person lost their job. And right out of the blue, they called me and told me that they had just been a victim of a layoff, had lost their job. And I worked with that person through that kind of trauma. I'm not a counselor, so fortunately, as part of their practice, they had access to counseling for a short period of time. So sent them off there to look after themselves kind of mentally, and we focused on their career. But this person then redesigned their career and ended up in the most unbelievable global position in another country halfway around the world with their family, with education provided for their kids. It was a complete, like, I can't even begin to describe to you the kind of destiny transformation that this individual had out of that 6-month, 7-month journey from restructuring to signing the contract and saying, okay, I'm heading off to this brand new opportunity. So that was one. And the other one was never really underestimating the impact that you have. And this is the link that I sent you in the LinkedIn messages beforehand. Is I did have the opportunity to coach an entrepreneur many, many years ago when he had just exited his company. And it was a successful exit of his company, but it was not like a massive exit. It was a modest exit. And I think that he did well, and the board and the other shareholders did well out of that exit. It was a private company. But he was hungry for more. He was hungry for the next thing. He was really, really, really hungry for the next thing and wanted to do something big, really, really big. He couldn't let go of that hunger. He was so hungry. He was so anxious to move on to the next step. And the coaching that we went through was literally coaching to have him be still and to embrace that he was actually in a gap and to not try to resist that gap. Because if he tried to resist that gap's just going to persist. He's just going to be hungrier and hungrier. He's going to be more and more anxious about moving on. So he really had to discipline himself over maybe the 10 or 12 weeks that we worked together. He had to really discipline himself to be still. So that guy was still, and he started when I was really reflecting back on this experience, he started examining a kind of be still lifestyle. And out of that be still lifestyle, he came up with a new company, which just went huge, went absolutely billionaire huge. And he exited it several years ago. But that company is a company that people watch every single day to find out what it's doing. And that story gives me goosebumps because it's so easy for us to underestimate the impact that we have. And many, many years had gone by, but when I actually went back and looked at his history and when was it that he invented the next thing and what was it that led up to that, it gives me goosebumps.
Wow. I want to talk to you about your transition right now, right? Let me share something here first, people. Can you tell us a little bit about this? What is this picture taken?
Oh, yes. Yeah, so my wife and I started my career as an entrepreneur, and I finished, and my goal is to finish my career as an entrepreneur. I reached a point where I had worked 14 years in my last company, and I just was really having a lot of conversations with friends, like close confidants, and also with my wife and my family about moving on. And I had been preparing for the transition into coaching for a while and had a couple of buddies in the industry that were a few years ahead of me that had already made that transition. And so I left my last organization. And when I left the organization, my HR team actually nominated me for an award here in Hong Kong. And that was, they did the whole thing as like a departure gift. And I had an idea that this was going on because they asked me for a little bit of input. But they put together this whole nomination package. The people who ran the award said you got to do a video, so they did a video. I didn't know they were doing a video. And then on my last day, or second last day in the company, they shared with me the video, and I found out that they not officially nominated me for this award. I had a sneaking suspicion something was going on. And then everything went quiet. And after I left my job for probably about 4 to 6 weeks, I was really in a period of rest and doing a lot of travel around the region to just kind of take a break, sit on a beach for a while and think about what's next. Be still, like I told that guy years ago, be still. Maybe I'll come up with $1 billion idea, CJ, who knows. And then when I got back to Hong Kong, they called me up and said, hey, we want you to come to this banquet. And I'm like, oh, I might be out of town. And they said, no. We think you need to come to the banquet. And I won the award, and it was award for, there were 3 of us nominated for most inspiring HR leader in Hong Kong. So that
That's
was very, very
amazing.
special. Yeah, thank you. It was very special.
Yeah. I wanted to actually show here on LinkedIn. I know it's kind of small, but let's see if I can make it this bigger. When it comes to your post, right? Because this is exactly what we're just talking about right now, right? The billionaire who stood still, what's next? What does it really mean? And I think I want to emphasize that because sometimes we live especially here in America, it's a hustle culture. Hustle, hustle, hustle. Next one. Oh, we got 5 minutes here. We got 5 seconds here. I know I'm like that right now, right? And so for the last month, I think I kind of slowed down a bit on the hustle culture and smell the roses. I have lived most of my life here in San Diego. I mean, I lived in the East Coast for a while as well in Northern California, but my kids and my husband, and they're born here in San Diego, but we don't get to really visit our town and really see how beautiful San Diego is, right? Until you kind of do. So we've been in this kick. My youngest and I are been in this kick to visit all kinds of cafes. And when I look at the picture and I'm thinking, why am I thinking of going to Hawaii? Literally 30 minutes away from me. Like it's La Jolla. It's right there, And so I love this advice, and I'm going to take this advice that you basically says, hey, don't come from rushing, they come from standing still long enough to let them rise. I like that, staying still. Do you have a formula of how long should you stay still, or is that just depends on where you're feeling and how you're seeing? Because when you're busy, your brain's going too many miles an hour, right? But if you're going to just stand still there and ideas pop up, like how do you make sure that you materialize that with actionable steps?
Yeah, well, one of the ways, there's a couple of stories. I can actually tell you a very, very personal story in a couple of minutes about stopping to smell the roses. But first of all, I agree, and you need to be actionable. So one thing is, a lot of people think that technology is speeding us up and that AI is speeding us up. And it's true, there's a lot of disruption. But the relationship that I would guide people, if people were asking me for advice, or if I was wearing a mentoring hat, the advice and the mentoring I would offer to people is to use technology to help you slow down. And your Plod.ai is a good example of that, and the note system, the AI note takers that I use, is a good example of that. We're actually able to slow down and get more done in coaching sessions with my clients because they're not troubled by taking notes. They know that after the fact, they are going to get a link to the notes, to a summary and the transcript, and then they can ask as many questions as they want, and they know I'm going to ask them questions anyway based on that session. But it gives them a chance to slow down and to think. So that's a very simple example of using technology to slow you down. But another example is, where do people get their inspiration? That's another question for people to ask themselves. Where do they get that inspiration? They typically get that inspiration in the shower. There's a lot of research around that because the body responds to water and gets inspired by water. And there's a whole element of research that water is a structural conversation. So when you immerse yourself in water, there's a form of communication with the outside world that's going on with your body, but we won't get into that. It's a whole other hour. Another place people get their inspiration is when they go on those walks, when they stop to smell the roses, when they go to the end of the dock, and have a glass of wine or their favorite beverage, cup of tea, their favorite coffee, when they go to the beach and just sit and watch and just find a way for the information to stop coming in. So then when do they stop being still? Would be when the really powerful earth-shattering inspiration comes to them. And this again is an area where you can use AI to assist you. So one of the things that I do, and it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but one of the things that I will do is if I have a really good idea is I'll just whip open my mobile phone, open up one of my AI note takers, and just recite my idea, and then I'll capture my idea in the iPhone and then go back to it later. But I will say that the one thing that will help people generating new ideas is if they still have a discipline of a certain amount of time per week or maybe per month of writing things down on paper. So part of the action part that you're talking about, CJ, is that you actually sit down and go through your notes in your AI and maybe ask the AI or figure out for yourself, what are the most inspiring parts of my notes that I've recited here in the last couple of weeks, and then write them down and mind map them with colored pens and that sort of thing. Get them out of your head, crystallizing, because writing crystallizes thought. The process of writing things down and getting it out of your head helps people to really better understand their ideas. But other than that, you have to be still for as long as possible. But I do think that at some point people need to get intolerant, and even if they're being still, make sure that the still time is productive. So going back to the billionaire example, he actually was still, but while he was still, he had a real commitment to fitness. And so he was really focusing on his fitness and things like that. And it was out of that stillness and the fitness that he came up with the next big idea.
I love that Susanna says, I can see having a chat with Charles on inspiration would be an amazing conversation and may open some enlightenment on in between the spaces. Yeah, because we all are in between. To be honest with you, everybody's in between. There's no destination in life. It's just a journey, guys. Let's
That's
keep
right.
going. Right.
That's
There's no
right.
ending. So and I think people when it's not like you're doing a promotion and you're leveling up each promotion and there's a destination, but in life there isn't. It's a journey that you gotta go through. My second to the last question is this: for someone listening who feels stuck in their career or leadership path, what's your first move advice to shake things loose and maybe get clarity? Because I know you do coaching now, and I was actually amazed when I was digging up a little bit that you have helped like more than 350, people in Fiverr alone. Like most people
Yes.
don't actually think about going to Fiverr and in the gig economy and do coaching with high level professionals, and you did it. So I'm like, okay, so what is your first move advice? If there's anything else for people to say, you know what, I'm stuck, or maybe I need a little bit of inspiration for myself, what would be that first move advice that you would give someone?
Yeah. So one thing is don't underestimate the paradigm that you're currently living in. So get yourself out of your paradigm. And what that would look like is if you're, frantically working a job Monday to Friday, even if you work from home, because when you're working from home, the lines get blurred between personal and business, right? All the time. And you end up doing a little bit longer work day. When the kids come home, you're still finishing up those emails just because the emails are there. So one of them is to get out of your paradigm. So what that looks like is take a break, go away somewhere for ideally a weekend, right? And go to the end of the dock somewhere, go to the beach somewhere. And then the other thing, figure out what inspires you. Is it music that inspires you, like your intro video, that kind of music, or is it reading that inspires you? But give your brain a positive, empowering distraction. Get out of the paradigm, shift the environment somewhere. And then step number 3 is do a brain dump and write down on a piece of paper and this exercise would need to be done on paper. It's ill-advised to do it on AI because then you're just having it cycle through into a device instead of in your head, instead of onto paper. But do a brain dump. So all the things that are stressing you out, all the areas where you're worried about not being motivated, all the goals that you've always wanted to pursue that you haven't pursued yet, all the ideas that you've forgotten about when you were a kid that you think someday you might still accomplish, write them all down. Just write them all down on paper. And that is step number 1. Or get a coach. And the coach will tell you to do that as your first homework assignment.
I love homework. Oh my gosh. Okay, my last question, okay, I promise, is this, okay? If this is your last day today on this earth, what would be your parting message to your current and future families in terms of living life, legacy, and impact?
Yeah, I should have known this question was coming because I've watched your other lives and I've seen this question before come up, right? Okay, my parting message would be life is temporary, but ideas are permanent. So, whatever ideas you have, make sure that you find a way for those ideas to manifest and to last. So, for example, if you've always had an idea to write a book, then write that book. And I know, what a great time to seize that idea and partner up with CJ here and your team and write that book. Never was there an easier time in history to write a book. Or the other thing is maybe you want to retain your family legacy. So get all the family stories from your family that you want to, from your history, family history, and get those written down on paper or captured somewhere in a digital book or something like that. But the parting message would be lead with love, and that life is temporary, but ideas are permanent. And you can live on in those ideas long after that last day.
Wow, I just learned something. I'm like, wow, I've just
What,
learned
tell me what
something.
you learned. What did you learn?
Oh my god, I learned a lot, but this is more like it's pausing my brain a little bit because I do the action, but I haven't sat down and really reflect on my actions because I just, like I said, I'm in the hustle culture cycle, right? But what you just said right now is very profound to me, at least, right? Because at the end of the day, you're right, life is temporary, but ideas are permanent because they outlive us,
That's
right? They
right.
move through generations, they change lives, whether we meant to do it or not. And what we choose to create or speak and believe in today becomes the blueprint for someone else's tomorrow.
Absolutely. You're
That's
absolutely right.
Yeah, and you reminded me that leadership is more than action, obviously, it's intention, right?
Mhm.
It's the courage to plant seeds of transformation even when we might not see them bloom ourselves. Because think about all the artists, right? All of the artists that we like Goo Goo Gaga in today, some of them lived destitute. They never even enjoyed their own work.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of a movie called Searching for Sugar Man?
No.
Watch the movie Searching for Sugar Man. That's exactly the story. A musician in Detroit who got ripped off by his agent, but he had a massive following in South Africa who listened to him for decades. And the story is a docudrama about how a couple of curious journalists reunited this destitute musician in Detroit with this massive fan base in South Africa. And the guy was resurrected like 30 years later. It was amazing, amazing, amazing movie.
Well, that's actually good because often you die first before you become a legend. How is that even? It's just so crazy and reverse. Like, so you go forward, but don't just chase success because success means so many different things to so many people. It's not the money, obviously, and it's not the big house or the dog and the picket fence. It's like igniting ideas, sharing your wisdom like you do now. Lead with purpose, people, because long after the applause fades, it's your ideas that will echo louder.
Yeah. And one of the exercises I do with my clients, CJ, is a life messages exercise where we look at a long-term life plan. And one of the things that they complete in that long-term life plan are what are the life messages that they want to pass down to the next generation, starting with their kids. And they write them down.
This is why I do anthologies and legacy purpose driven anthologies, is because my experience is that I always say, "Oh, 100 years from now no one will ever know you." Guess what? My grandfather died in 1970s. That hasn't been 100 years and I don't know who he, not my grandfather, my great grandfather. And I don't even know who he was, and he's prolific. The only reason why I know that he's prolific is because some some students in the University of the Philippines wrote about his life and how
Mm,
amazing he was and his inventions. I'm like, wait, what? That was my great grandfather? Mom, how come you didn't tell me about this?
yes,
Right? And
fantastic.
yeah, but that motivated me to know more and create more for my great grandkids to really capture. And I really want to capture the in between of people, the messy side that people don't talk about. I think we need to normalize to basically say, hey, if you're struggling right now, it's part of the journey. It's part of your growth. It's okay. I don't know why we want to always like delete everything is perfection. Even though we believe that there's no such thing as perfect, but we still do the actionable things in our brain. It's like oxymoron walking around all day, every day. Oh my gosh, we could go on and on. But thank you so
Yeah,
much for being here today, Charles.
yeah,
I
it's
really
my pleasure.
appreciate
Thank
you.
you. Thank you
Yeah,
so
and it's
much. I
late
appreciate you.
in Hong Kong. So I appreciate you. Have a beautiful sleep.
Thank you
And
so much.
I will see you again next time. Bye, everybody. Thank you
Outstanding.
so much for being here.
Okay.
See ya.
Thank you.
I started in the silence, behind closed doors. Dreams too loud to keep tucked in the floorboards. Late nights, broke days, no applause in sight. Just coffee, hustling that fire to fight. They said, play small, but I'm built to expand. No silver spoon, just grit in my hand. I wore every note like armor and steel. Visibility's a battle, but I'm real and I heal. From invisible threads to the front of the stage, I'm rewriting the script, turning scars into page. Level up, rise above the fear. Let them hear your voice, make your purpose clear. Every step, every stumble, every tear in the rough. You were made for this moment, you are enough. Level up, break through the doubt. Turn the whispers of your past into a victory shout. You ain't just chasing clout, you're building a legacy. Now the world's gonna see what they couldn't believe. Yeah, yeah. What they couldn't believe. See the back end, just a headline glow. But success is built slow, where the struggle don't show. Algorithms change, but your mission's divine. You're the brand, you're the vision, you're the power behind. You gave free just to prove you have value inside. Now it's invoices paid and your name amplified. You're not just in business, you're changing the game. And your visibility, that's more than a name. No more shrinking, this is expansion. No more asking, this is commanding. You've been the spark, now you're the flame. Entrepreneur by fire, fueled by name. Level up, rise above the fear. Let them hear your voice, make your purpose clear. Every step, every stumble, every tear in the rough. You were made for this moment, you are enough. Level up, break through the doubt. Turn the whispers of your past into a victory shout. You ain't just chasing clout, you're building a legacy. Now the world's gonna see what they couldn't believe. What they couldn't believe. To the late nights, the lost friends, the risks you took, to the brand you built and the space you shook. Here's your crown, your moment, your spotlight beam. You didn't just chase the dream, you became the dream.